All right, everybody, we have a very special guest who is back here in the Brownie post-game verse. We've got my good friend Chris McNeil, aka Reflog _18 at Twitter. Chris, welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be here, Mike. We're looking at a new Browns season, a new fresh start for us. So that's always exciting this time of year.
Absolutely, 100%. So for anybody out there who's on the Twitter side or on the YouTube side who's not on the Twitter side, Chris, would you say you're the most followed independent Browns fan, like on Twitter?
Really thought of it in those terms. Independent Browns fan.
Like non-media affiliated, like officially.
Right. Since I don't have any official, media designation at all. I guess maybe just as a lay person. I'm just out of the lay people, I would say on Twitter. I'd say probably as a Browns fan, I am probably the most followed. You're probably right there, Mike.
And that comes with a certain amount of power, right? And responsibility, as we learned from Spider-Man over and over. Do you wake up every morning and go, who am I gonna with just one push of a button, you could make somebody go viral for whatever you feel like? Do you have that feeling of power every day?
With great power comes great responsibility, right? No, not at all. I always look for what makes me chuckle. If it makes me chuckle, I'll retweet it. And if you're going to tag me in something, chances are I'm not going to retweet it unless it's really, really good. So for anybody out there in the Twitterverse who's wondering how you get a retweet, just make me laugh and then I'll retweet it.
Yeah. No, I've actually, for some reason, I get a bunch of people who have started to just I've never talked to these people. I don't know who they are.
You?
They're tagging me and they're like, here, and they tag like all these media people. They tagged me and I'm like, I don't, what do I do with this? Like, do I endorse it? I don't know. I know. I made
it. As soon as you start getting tagged, that means you are part of royalty. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
We're in the tagged for everything club, which I would love to shed that. That's one thing that does come with followers is tagging. And that does get somewhat annoying. But like you said before, with great power comes great responsibility. You're going to get the taggers, the hangers on. And it's just something that happens.
It's funny. I was thinking back to like when I kind of first started on Twitter, and I guess I sort of did that too, because I didn't really know how to use Twitter. I didn't really understand kind of like how it all worked and everything. And I was like, well, if I just go to everybody and tag everybody in it who has followers, then my stuff will just go viral. And I think just a lot of people think like that.
Not only do people do that, generally they'll also attach at least 20 different hashtags. Hashtag Browns, hashtag Go Browns, hashtag whatever the hashtags are. They got to do that. Then they tag you. Those are the ones that really get me. It's like there's a 0.0 chance I'm going to retweet that.
Now,
that looks spammy as hell.
Now, also, I would say probably in terms of people making memes on Brown's Twitter, like you've got to be the top guy there as well. Do you wake up every morning and just go, what dank meme comes to mind that I can put out in the Twitter sphere about the Browns?
You're basically asking me, Chris, are you a tremendous loser? Is this what your day consists of? Is waking up and thinking about memes all day long? And the answer is no. There's about 10% where I get other work done, and then the rest of the 90% is probably thinking about the Browns in some fashion, and that's my burden to bear. That's a big issue, really.
I mean, to be honest, sometimes I sit there and I'm like, there's no way that he's just continuing to come up with, like, he has to have a staff of people, like interns, little elf munchkins that are out there that are just ready to go and coming up with content for him to be able to post that kind of like fits with your voice.
Right. No, Mike, I'm divorced, so I got time on my hands, and here is how I fill that time. That void is filled by Brown's Twitter and memes.
I love it.
Once again, I am in no way a loser right now, and I'm not feeling like a loser by admitting all of this.
I mean, honestly, it brightens my day because I know, like when I made the animated little video for you guys last weekend for the Ohio State game, I sat there and I was like, this is literally it. This is your moment. These huge, these tent pole type games, that are just that everybody's gonna be watching. I'm like, this is it.
Brown Sunday is absolutely crazy. Like
Yeah.
you put out the dumbest thing and all of a sudden it catches fire. It amazes me because you forget about it. And it's going to happen to me this Sunday. I mean, you're pretty used to, coming through the summer. You come to July, August, there's not a whole lot. I mean, the Browns are starting up, but you're still kind of dog days. And then as soon as that first game really hits, I mean, you talk about Twitter hitting different. It's an absolutely different experience. It's just high traffic. I mean, you go from impressions that are like 100,000 a day to 2.5 million just overnight. And a good game day is going to be over 8 million. And that just boggles my mind. Just boggles my mind. But that's the passion of Browns fans. And you know it, Mike. You put out a lot of the great content as well. You see
Thank
it.
you.
It's just what makes it in our universe is all the fans who are just so into the Browns and just so committed, just like we are, on the ups, the downs, the roller coaster that inevitably is the Cleveland Browns. And so that's what makes this whole thing work. I mean, if we were Jaguars fans or something like that, it just doesn't work. You know, you don't have a passionate fan base. You don't have people who care. These people live and die, as do I, and as do you. And so you get that passion out there, and people want to share stupid stuff that I do, I guess.
I honestly couldn't believe how powerful Browns Twitter actually is. Because you think about it, you got the Browns backers in every city. Like you said, there's teams that have a certain amount of passion. Some do, some don't, that kind of thing. But Browns Twitter specifically, I would be willing to bet, I don't have any stats to back this up, but this is the most engaged fan base in professional sports in America. Right, outside of like the soccer thing, in other countries, but like in America, the Browns probably are the most passionate fan base there is on Twitter.
Yeah, it's another branch of the military, basically. Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, Space Force, Browns Twitter.
Right?
I mean, and probably scarier, quite frankly, than some of the others that are out there. It is. It's a beast. It's a beast. It's always been that way since I can remember. It's funny. You go through, the Guardians, the Cleveland Guardians, you go through the Cleveland Cavs, and, you have a certain level of engagement, but then you get to the Browns, and the Browns for people are like brothers and sisters. They're like family. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cavs and the Guardians, I know a lot of people are very passionate, as am I, but it's more like a next door neighbor. Somebody you care about a whole lot, but they're not quite in your house. Like the Browns are just there all the time. You wake up, the Browns are there. Even in the off season, the Browns are right there. So it's like they're in your house. And I don't know that it's that way for other fan bases. You get a little bit with Ohio State, I think, in Ohio. And I think Ohio in itself is an anomaly. I can't even say the word. An anomaly. When you look at states across the U.S. in terms of just the passion for sports,
there's a lot of pride for Ohio. Absolutely,
a lot of pride for Ohio. Number one, and then we care about sports an awful lot. If you look at Super Bowls, and of course the last one involved the Bengals, but most of the time they don't involve anything from Ohio, any teams from Ohio. World Series when they don't involve the Guardians or the Reds. You always look at the ratings, and Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Cincinnati, sometimes they're always going to be like in the top 10. And it's amazing to me, like how much we care generally about sports in Ohio. And it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. Ohio's made for me, and I'm made for Ohio, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny. Like, I mean, I've never personally lived in Ohio. I've lived in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Florida primarily. And, I was just kind of like, everybody was surprised that like, hey, why are you a Browns fan? I get the question all the time. Right. And it's even funny every once in a while on Twitter, if I say something controversial or something that somebody doesn't agree with, they'll bring up the fact that I don't live in Cleveland.
You're less of a Browns fan. Right.
Right. And I was like, I'd argue I'm more of a Browns fan. Because you guys at least have each other.
It's harder to live down there and be a Browns fan than it is to live in Cleveland. At least people get it. You wear a shirt around and people are like, what's that? You wear one in Cleveland, it's like, who's
it's
not
normal. Right. So it's funny. I mean, speaking specifically about the Browns, we got the season coming up. As the time of this recording, the no games have started yet in the NFL, so it is still technically preseason. Games start on Thursday night. What is your? I've been asking everybody I've had on, leading up to the first game here. What is the prediction for the Browns? I don't care about the season prediction. I care about what do you think for the first 11 games? What is our record going to be out of the first 11 games?
Oh, you're asking me basically to play the schedule game. And overall, I've got the team winning double-digit games, which makes me very, very nervous.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first 11 games, that's going to be the make or break. We've got to get to the Deshaun days. And, I like our chances. I really do. And, football gods, don't be looking, or shut your eyes and close your ears right now while I say this. But I think we've got more talent than most of the teams we're going to play, especially that you look at the first 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a lot of the teams on our schedule, you got the Bengals, obviously, and the Ravens in division. I think we can stand up to the Ravens and Bengals. They don't scare me. They really don't, like they have in the past. And then the remainder of our schedule, I think there's only a couple of games where I look at and I go, ooh, that's tough. Other than that, we're an above average team, and that's where you want to be in the NFL. And if you're above average, you're talking about double-digit wins. So for these first 11 games, I think it's possible that we go like 6-5, right? Mm-hmm. But knowing the Browns, maybe it's 5-6, and then we got to play some catch up, because we've got to get to double-digit wins to have a chance at the playoffs. And with the expanded playoffs and everything else, you get to double digits, you're going to be in good shape. I think you don't have to win the division. You just have to be up there. And I like the improved defense. I like what we've got there. I think Nick Chubb is poised to have just a fantastic season. I really do. I know that we've lost our center, which is very ominous right there in the first play of preseason.
Right.
Who's Nick Harris. Very Browns-like, right? But I still have, I don't know. I have optimism every single year, but I'm a little bit more optimistic, I guess, than in the past, because I just think that we don't have the number of holes that we have in the past. And there's question marks around the wide receivers, obviously. Even at tight end, is Njoku actually going to step up and be the Njoku we all think that he can, now that he's signed the contract? And then, of course, a quarterback with Jacoby Brissett leading into Deshaun Watson. So having said all of that, I really, nothing scares me too much in terms of the other teams in the league. It's going to be a matter of us going out there and executing. It's going to be on Stefanski this year. Stefanski's got to put it all together. He's got some naysayers now. He was the golden boy there for a little while. And now with Baker gone, it's like, Stefanski, you've got the team that we think you wanted, right? This is the group of personnel that you wanted,
right,
that you and Andrew Berry have put together. So now you've got to come to the table and you got to deliver some W's.
Now, let me throw a wrinkle in this.
Please do.
Okay.
Because the Browns themselves never do that.
No, never.
So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. If you could not say, you couldn't give the answer 6 wins or 5 wins. So it has to be 7 or 4. Which one is it in the first 11?
Wow. I've seen a lot of Browns teams. I'm going to go 4.
All right.
I mean, and let me make this clear. I'm not rooting for 4. I want to see a winning ball club. I don't want to be talking at any point this season about a stupid parade or anything like that. But just knowing Cleveland sports, I would bet my mortgage on the 4 rather than the 7. Although, quite honestly, I think it's almost a 50-50 proposition. I could see us just as easily winning 7, maybe even 8 games. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, we're right there. And in the NFL, you're really playing at the margin, right? I think we've got more talent than most of the teams that we play. And then when you get to the margin, you start talking about things like, kickers.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do in the offseason? We bring in Cade York. Everybody loves Cade York. I love Cade York. Great kicker out of LSU. Seems to get kicking in that stadium. Walked in the first preseason game there at home and see him kick a 62-yarder, and he comes out the next week and kicks one from almost 70 or 70 plus or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
No, this is without other players on the field. This is just in warmups, but nonetheless, the guy's got the leg. He's going to learn about kicking in that stadium, hopefully, so that come playoffs, he's going to be set to go. But I think him by himself may add a couple of wins. And with a team that's talented, with a kicker who can win at the margins, we could have a good season. We really, really could. And that's where my hope lies.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I was going to ask you about that. It's like with what we've seen in the past, it's been, can we avoid injury? Can we avoid COVID? The answer to that, by and large, was no in the last couple of years. Right. And then can we execute on special teams and limit penalties? And the answer to that was no. And yet we still managed to make it to the playoffs in 2020 and win a game, right? That was without our best offensive wide receiver weapon, arguably, with OBJ that season. So now with this talent that's coming back, and a lot of these guys that are entering their true age prime, right? Guys like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, and we still have some younger guys as well. But these are the guys that are now entering that like 3 to 4 year prime years. And they have some experience now. So it's experience plus talent plus coaching plus just some things falling in place. But the big wild card is the quarterback situation for the first 11 games. And if we win 4, again, let's continue down this path, right? We are Browns fans. We all know this. If we win 4 and Deshaun comes in, right?
Then you got to rattle off 6 straight.
Well, I mean, you have to be perfect, and then there's like even that at that point, there's still an outside chance. I mean, you're gonna be fighting uphill the whole time. But is the season more or less like, do we just kind of like, all right, let's just make sure nobody gets hurt and just kind of play it out, or what? Like, is the season a wash at that point if we can't get into a position where we're in striking distance by the time Deshaun gets back?
Then you start saying to Roger Goodell, hey, why don't you suspend him for the rest of the season, and then let's bump out his contract by 1 year.
Right. Just tack one on to the end, right?
Tack one on to the end. He can't play. We're doing the right thing here, whatever that may be. No, I hate to think about that. We haven't even kicked off in the first game here, Mike, and you're already bringing me down.
Hey, we're going devil's advocate. Like we're
way devil's advocate. You're going farther in the devil's advocate than I normally do at this time of the year.
We are going
wait
dark.
Until at least kickoff before my memes come out. Just self-loathing as a Browns fan.
No, but
I limit myself there.
If you would have said, I feel 9 games, and I'm like, all right, like what happens if we're at 7 then? Like everybody is saying 5 to 6 games. Everybody, media people, every fan, you yourself, nervous, right? 5, 6, right? So honestly, I'd take it at this point. I'd write the check. If you give me 5 or 6, flip a coin. I'd take that at this point because I think it gives us a fighting chance towards the end of the year.
I mean, I look at this team versus last year's team, and how much more confident are you in this year's team than last year's? I'd say I'm a couple of games more confident. You bring in Cade York. I know you're stepping back initially at quarterback until Deshaun comes in. But the overall talent level, I think, is up. So you're saying, all right, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 wins. I mean, last year we win 8, so that brings us into the 11, 12 win realm, potentially, if you're just winning at the margin over last year. So I don't know, at any point, and that should always be kind of the footnote on anything that I would say, we can see and can expect the wheels potentially to fall off. Right. That's the disclaimer on anything.
A helmet can be swung.
In the NFL, a couple of key injuries. All of a sudden, we've got wide receivers that we're signing off the street. We've got, linebackers that can't tackle anybody, and just the dam is broken, right? Doesn't matter what Nick Chubb does.
Sure.
And that could happen at any point. We know where the weaknesses are on this team. And, Stefanski does too. And you brought this up before. So the thing that we've got to do is limit the mistakes, right? Because we cannot be shooting ourselves in the foot and expecting to win ball games. It's going to be tight, especially at the beginning of the year. So he's got to be smarter. None of these stupid too many men on the field. And then you go and come out with too few on the field. I mean, we can't be having that this year and expect to be successful. So I'm putting Stefanski, if not on the hot seat, he's definitely on the warm seat this year. This is the year to shine for him. He's got to show up like he did a couple of years ago when we all thought he was a genius. And that that comes down to discipline from this team and really getting them to execute.
Right. And I think to your point that you were saying about, hey, we took a step back in the quarterback position. There's a lot of people out there, especially on Brown's Twitter, that would say that, Jacoby Brissett, a healthy Jacoby Brissett, is as good, if not better than as certainly an injured Baker Mayfield, like he was with, an arm hanging off his body literally last year.
I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think that's a hot take. The guy was hurt. And then on top of that, I somehow that injury was going to his brain, because you see some of the decision-making that he was making. It wasn't the same Baker Mayfield at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I think Jacoby Brissett is better than the version of Baker Mayfield that we saw the end of last year when he was injured and making bad decisions. And I don't think that's even that hot of a take, to be honest.
Now, let me ask you this. Also, from what we saw in the preseason, one of the guys that pretty much everyone has pointed out as being a really big surprise is Josh Dobbs. Was that preseason magic, or did he kind of show off some of his talent to say, listen, if it gets rocky with Jacoby, we do have a guy that we could potentially hand the ball to and add another name to the jersey? Like, is that an option in your mind?
I'm going to always have, when I think back to this preseason, that enduring image of him streaking down the sidelines with that long strip of his shirt just hanging out as he's going, right? Yeah. I mean, he just adds that other dynamic to the offense that you're not going to get from Jacoby Brissett. And he's a lot closer to Deshaun Watson's type of game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of more of a dual threat. He's gonna run the ball a little bit than what you're going to see with Jacoby Brissett. So I don't think they're necessarily lying or playing games when they say that he may come in. There may be a package for him. Now, a lot of coaches like to say that and use it as some sort of a decoy, so that they have to practice for it and think that they're, doing something, playing this chess game. But I honestly think that there could be some situations where they bring him in. I think he impressed enough in the preseason. Now, we've fallen in love with a lot of guys in the preseason.
Oh, yeah.
There's a long list of the Ben Gays and
Deshaun Kaiser was fantastic in the preseason.
Deshaun Kaiser, Josh Lentz. I mean, all kinds of positions all across the field. So I don't put a lot of stock into it, outside of the fact that I think this is a very athletic guy. I think it's a very smart guy. I'll tell you what, he impressed the heck out of me. Every time they put a microphone in front of his face, be like, wow, this guy has got so much on the ball. This is when you talk about a leader. This is the type of guy you look for. So now, all that being said, it doesn't much matter unless you can get on the field and execute. And we'll see. We'll see if they use him in any kind of a package. But if you lose Jacoby Brissett, I'm going to be nervous. I won't lie, because Dobbs he's a young guy. But at the same time, I'm anxious to see if he gets the opportunity, what he would do with it.
Yeah, I think so. I feel the same way. I don't know if you put the number ones with him. You give him our number ones, like, our running backs, our wide receivers, because I mean, he really did. He had some of the one on the offensive line for a percentage of the time he was in there, but going up against the number one defense is, it changes the game a little bit. So, thinking about defense, how do you feel now going into another season with Joe Woods playing that soft zone defense that he does, the never blitz defensive coordinator that we have? How do you feel we look? Can we get by on talent alone on defense, or is the scheme going to actually have to come in and play a part this season?
We've got to figure out a way to create turnovers. We just do. I am convinced of that. In today's NFL, you've got to create turnovers. And for a team like this that is not, we're right in there talent level with everybody else. You've got to do things, and I keep saying this, at the margins, right? Because it's the little things that we haven't done in the past that always get us. And one of those things is creating turnovers, and that can change the entire outlook of a game. You think back to the year that the Colts beat the Bears with Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. The Bears were there with Rex Grossman, and they were there simply because they kept turning over everybody. Like, the defense was just ball hawks out there all season long, and it brought them all the way to the Super Bowl. And if we can get a defensive effort like that, and I think I really like our corners, so our chances playing the ball Playing the passing game are good, especially when we got our guys coming off the edge with obviously Myles Garrett. I think is going to have a great season. We're going to be soft up the middle. And at the same time, you can be a little soft up the middle if you can get to that ball. So I think that's going to be the real key here. Everybody's going to be looking for us to be a real consistent defense. I'd love that. But I'm honest when I say that I think that we're probably going to have plenty of those bend and for us not to break, we're going to have to create those turnovers.
Is this the most talented Browns team that you have seen in your adult life?
In my adult life? Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Now, as a youngster, of course, I saw the Bernie Kosar, Hanford Dixon, Frank Minifield, Clay Matthews, Ernest Biner, Webster Slaughter, Brian Brennan, Ozzie Newsome, Cody Risen. I mean, you could just go down, Kevin Mack, all those teams. They were just loaded. It's absolutely loaded.
Those are the teams that I became a Browns fan with. I mean, I'm 42 years old. I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1980, and it wasn't a weird thing to be a Browns fan because they were a very dominating team in the 80s and I guess a little bit in the early 90s. And speaking of that,
if it wasn't for John Elway and the damn Denver Broncos, we would say, man, it'd be nice to get back to those Super Bowl teams at the mid to late 80s like we had.
Oh my gosh, I think back to those quite a bit, and especially when I was doing all those hype videos and I was making grabbing clips from those days. It was like, man, we had such a better team on paper, other than the 89 season. I think the 89 one was like meh, but 86 and 87 certainly had much better teams, going into the Super Bowls. That the Broncos got smashed. I mean, I don't think they put up a competitive Super Bowl until the late 90s with Elway, and like Terrell Davis and those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those Browns teams and they really choked. I mean, you had the fumble, you had the drive. We choked on defense, we choked on offense, and I'm not going to put it on, Ernest Biner either. Webster Slaughter should have made that block, by the way.
Yeah,
but that's a team effort. Both of those are team efforts. That's team losses, and the funny part is, Mike, when I was a kid, and I'm sure you probably did the same thing. I started looking around the league, and I was thinking, that's okay. We'll be back next year, and sure enough, we were, right? Mm-hmm. And you look around, and you're like, man, what would it be like to be like a fan of a team like the Saints or the Patriots? Man, their fans have no hope every single year. They don't do anything. They're just horrible franchises. They're destined for just losing. And then you look at them now and you're like, wow, everybody had their turn except for us, it seems, in the world. But hopefully that changes this year, right, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, statistically speaking, you're right. It's like at some point we could have just like thrown darts at the draft board and got somebody decent. But going back, it's depressing.
One dart on one quarterback. Could have changed the whole franchise.
Yeah. And how many quarterbacks? Like, we could have actually drafted Deshaun Watson that season, that year. We would have had to draft him over Myles Garrett, which would have been a problem. But I think that all in all, there are guys that we could have gone out there and done. We could have made a play. We could have moved back up in the draft order to try to get some of these guys. And then we end up, giving him $230 million guaranteed with all the off the field shenanigans that we have to deal with as well. So,
or if we wouldn't have killed Tim Couch back in '99, if we would have just had a couple more quarterbacks we could have fed to the Wolves before we put him in there, that would have been nice too.
Oh my gosh.
I think Couch was cut short. He's one of the ones that I do see where the Cleveland Browns ruined that guy, because I've heard that from so many people. Oh, they just ruined quarterbacks. No, most of these quarterbacks that we've had have ruined themselves. I think Tim Couch is the one guy that we actually did ruin.
And I think the sad thing is a lot of Browns fans like think negatively about the uninitiated Browns fans. I would say think back and they think, oh, Tim Couch was a bust, and he's like one of the things that started it all off. He wasn't, like, by any means. You go back statistically, he was fine. He won games. He started off with way behind the eight ball with a team that we put around him with. Literally, guys that you've never heard. I mean, you had guys like Dennis Northcutt.
Remember the first Brown, 99? Who was the first Brown?
Chris Spielman, right?
No.
Hold on. I do know. He was Jim Pine.
Nice. I am impressed, Mike. Yes.
Yeah. You know why I know
Pine
that?
Was the first Brown.
Virginia Tech.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
By the way, I saw Miami of Ohio go into Virginia Tech and beat Michael Vick. I was at the stadium in Blacksburg that day.
Yeah, oh, wow. I would have been there then, because I went to basically because I was a freshman in 98 when Vic was a freshman. He redshirted. And then 99, obviously that was the national championship year where we just ran out of gas against Florida State. And that, I have a lot to say about that team, but, and then in 2000, Vic played quite a bit and then he got hurt a little bit. But he was special. Very similar to what we see with Lamar Jackson now.
Yeah, he is. And he was really, you had Randall Cunningham obviously before that, and you had some other running quarterbacks, Steve Young, but Michael Vick was just different.
Mm-hmm.
He came out, man. He was just different. He was quite a player.
Yeah, he was like, it was almost like, and I look at like basketball where like you had great players in basketball in the 90s. You had obviously Jordan and Magic and all those guys. And then Allen Iverson came around. Right. And it was just but he was so different and so dynamic, and it changed a lot of how it was. Although he never ended up getting a championship, but he still at least got them there. So, and speaking of which, thinking back to like those 80s teams with Kosar and Dixon and them. So you guys at Big Play. You've got the new Bernie Kosar and Hanford Dixon show going on right there. How did that all come together?
Huh? You talk about like 7-year-old me. If you would have told me that, hey, you're going to be basically working alongside Bernie Kosar and Hanford Dixon someday, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. I couldn't even imagine what my reaction would have been.
Yeah, just toss in like, oh, you're going to meet Santa Claus and like all the rest of the stuff as well.
Yeah, I would have been like, hey, I don't know. The rest of my life could be complete crap. I have made it as a human being. But yeah, they just started this week. We had our first episode. They're going to have a weekly every Monday night. So you can check in for that week's game for the Browns, and they're going to mix in some of their stories from back in the day. They shared how the dog pound came to be. Bernie was talking about the supplemental draft, and we're taking a lot of suggestions from Twitter of what people want to hear those two talk about. And in addition, they're going to have some guests that they're going to be bringing on. Bernie was talking about Bruce Smith coming on and guys of that ilk. So these are people who you and I would know very well from back in the day.
Absolutely.
Who both of those guys competed against and had some good stories and the Bills and the Browns back then going back and forth. Those are fantastic. So we're going to have a lot of those guys on too. So it should be just a fascinating show to watch as it rolls out this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Just asking those guys, there's a million questions I could ask Bernie. And some would be on the field stuff. Some would be, how the exit, like how it all went down with the Bernie had the guaranteed contract too, if we all remember that. And, here's a question. You're somebody who's obviously in the same kind of like the demo as I am. And I think back to this quite a bit. And there was a bit of controversy back when Bernie, at the end of Bernie's career, with the whole, Vinny or Bernie, because Bernie wasn't playing all that well and he was kind of banged up left and right. Can you imagine if there would have been Browns Twitter in the early 90s with like Bernie and the situation there and with Belichick and then getting cut? Can you imagine what that way would have it literally would have broken the internet.
Well, yeah. And I think
unknown caller.
Sorry about that. One of my kiddos.
All good.
Be linked up. Sorry about that. Yeah. What's funny about that with Bill Belichick is that I think that laid the groundwork for Tom Brady, right? Because Belichick came into Cleveland. You had Vinny Testaverde. You had Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar was the incumbent, the local boy. Everybody loves him. We're still talking about him today because he's so beloved in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And he had to make that decision to move on from him. And eventually, when Belichick would get to Boston, would get to the Patriots, you had a guy by the name of Drew Bledsoe, who was also well-respected there. He had some naysayers, but, they really believed from the time that they drafted him that was going to be the guy that was going to bring them to the promised land. And then he got hurt, And the prevailing thinking of that time, and I don't know if you remember this, and you don't see this too often anymore, but they said, hey, you can't lose your job because of an injury.
Yep.
There's no way he should lose his job. I remember sports talk vividly. It was like, no, there's this unwritten rule that a starting quarterback gets hurt, and when he comes back, it's his job. He hasn't done anything to lose it. Well, Tom Brady, of course, did what Tom Brady does and got them to the Super Bowl. And it was the question of, what do we do here? And Bill Belichick knew what to do. He continues to move on. Now, he may have, and probably did on the back end of Tom Brady's career, he may have made the mistake of doing it too early. But I think really cutting Bernie that way and moving on gave him the I don't know, the gumption to go and do the same thing when he got to the Patriots. So in a way, Bernie was kind of a trailblazer there with Belichick.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, the nice thing that you have seen, Bernie has been always really nice to Bill. He doesn't hold any like hard feelings about that. He ended up giving him, I think he gave him a game ball of the first game that Bill Belichick won as a Browns head coach. He saw him like before one of the big games and he handed it to him. And I think Bill loved that. So I mean, Bernie is just, I've never met him personally, but he actually, this is actually a funny story. He used to live in my parents' neighborhood down here in Florida.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he lived in Weston Hills Country Club. My parents, when they lived down in South Florida, and Bernie had a locker in the men's locker room at the golf course where my dad was obviously a member at. And every time I would go in there, I'd go in and knock on Bernie's on his locker for good luck and everything like that. And when I first moved to Florida, when I graduated from college, no job, no prospects, just moved to Florida to live at home. And so I just decided I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna walk to the gym at the neighborhood gym, which is about a half a mile, get a little exercise, go work out, and then come back. And the gym was a very small gym, and it was connected to the tennis courts at the country club. And there were a couple times where Bernie came in and he was playing, hitting tennis balls with one of his daughters. And I just remember I think I was just too young, but I was like legitimately starstruck. I was, I couldn't go, and he's enormous.
He is.
He's a big guy. And now to this day, I always feel bad. I'm like, man, I wish I would have gone up to him and just told him I was a big Browns fan and I loved him as a kid. I wore his, I not only in high school in practice, we could wear whatever jersey we wanted. We didn't have to wear the team jersey in practice. And I showed up wearing a Kosar jersey in Pennsylvania, and the first year, and then the next year, it showed up with a Kosar Cowboys jersey, because I liked him that much, and it just would have been fun to talk to him about that. But my dad actually got to talk to him a couple times, played poker with him once or twice. Nice. So that was cool. But I mean,
I had an experience with Bernie back several years ago, and this is before Reflog. This is before doing any of the media stuff or anything. Mm-hmm. He was down at he was dating a woman with Longaberger, and so he was kind of down in my area, and I was at a gas station, and I had my back turned to the counter, and I heard behind me this guy talking about the Cleveland Gladiators. He's like, yeah, I'm going up to the Gladiators. I'm like, that's Bernie Kosar behind me. I told the person I was with, I'm like, that's Bernie Kosar. I turn around, it's Bernie Kosar. I'm like, oh my God, I got to say something to him, right?
Yeah.
So the only thing, and I was the same way. I was very starstruck. I was like shaking, I was kind of embarrassing to admit as an adult, but I was, and I just walk up to him and I said, Bernie, I was at the Gastineau game, and he just turned and looked at me and goes, best late hit I ever took, and walks out. And I'm like, that was magic. That was absolutely magic. So, and I never thought I'd see Bernie again or do anything with Bernie, but if that would have been the end of everything, that would have been fine by me. That just made my day, made my week, made my year, made everything. But just him recognizing in that moment, I'm sure he's got a lot of people who come up to him that same way, but he had the response just like that. Best late hit I ever took. And I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he interestingly, I reported to a guy in my last company who was one of our VPs who he was from Youngstown, where and he went to high school with Bernie and graduated with Bernie's sister, and was telling me stories about that when he was a kid, and how honestly how really big he was. And you think, I mean, what is he, 6'5", right? And then he goes going to University of Miami, which at the time wasn't what the University of Miami had become. Like that happened because, in a lot of cases, because of Bernie and that foundation that he started there. So he went down to University of Miami from Youngstown, Ohio. This big guy wins the job, wins the national championship, right? And then goes on to pull that shenanigans with the supplemental draft with the Browns. And that, to me, my dad, I remember when he used to tell me that story about how he did that and what it meant to Browns fans, right? To you can't do anything like that. I mean, that
want to be in Cleveland.
Yeah.
To want to be in Cleveland that badly. And not only to be the homegrown son, but then to want to come home and to fight so much to do that. That's why he's beloved to today. People say, well, what did he win in Cleveland? He won a Super Bowl, but it wasn't with you guys. Like, what was it? It's like you'll never understand. You'll never understand that connection to Bernie Kosar. He was absolutely awesome on the field, but then everything around him was just so perfect. It was like a storybook.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see these like Netflix documentaries that like Johnny Football's going to get, Manziel's going to get and you sit there and you're like, there are such better stories out there to tell, about people that actually people love and they still love to this day. And I'm glad that he's healthier now. I'm glad that, he got through that, all the concussions that he took and the toll that put on him. There is some footage on YouTube where Bernie talks about the concussions and stuff, and then the treatment that he found a doctor in South Florida to treat him, really, and get him back.
That's part of his plan on this new show that we've got too. He's kind of teased that a few times, where he's going to go in depth between him and Hanford are going to talk a little bit about some of the repercussions they've had from playing so many years of professional football and collegiate football and high school football, and the cumulative effects on them and where they're at today. So that's, I know that was part of his plan going in. And I think that in these future episodes, you'll probably see some of that sprinkled in. He mentioned it during the first episode pretty prominently. So it'll be interesting to see, because I haven't heard obviously the whole story. And I think a lot of the whole story he's going to be telling really for some of the first time to the wider audience. So it'll be interesting to see how forthcoming he is with all his challenges.
Yeah, you think about the equipment that Bernie and Dixon and all those guys were playing with back then. I mean, they were basically just
and
like
two-a-days and real two-a-days.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
Practices that mattered, and practices where they'd hit, and practices where they, they're not playing patty cake out there.
Well, not even practices. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember, they gave you like a 2-second rule. The quarterback could throw the ball and they could get annihilated.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't until much, honestly, the last couple of years, really, maybe even that the concussion movie that came out that really forced them to protect the quarterbacks. But these guys, you look at like what Dan Marino said, what Favre has said, what Troy Aikman went through, what Joe Montana went through. Joe Montana is a guy who's basically like left the public eye because of all the issues he was dealing with.
Same with Jim McMahon.
100% Jim McMahon.
Yeah, all those guys from that time, and hey, it was celebrated. It was celebrated.
NFL play the video game.
The NFL would put out the videos themselves.
Yeah,
of quarterbacks just getting destroyed. And that was a big part of football. And that was like what you would tune in for. It was like NASCAR looking for the wrecks. It was the same thing.
Yeah.
The game has evolved quite a bit since then, but that's a very prominent part of the game.
Yeah. I remember when I wanted to play football as a kid, my parents were always like, oh, you're going to get hurt. My dad played football, so he was okay with it. My mom was really worried about all that stuff. And now as a parent myself and seeing my kids, and I'm like, honestly, I'd rather you just play start a YouTube channel and play Madden, right?
No kidding.
It's so much safer.
I can sleep better at night. That's right.
Exactly. And it could turn into more of a career than probably what you're going to get from your genetics that I've passed down.
Is that funny? Like, kid, why are you playing sports? Go play video games. There's a future there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things have changed a little bit, huh? in our lifetimes?
It's funny.
I mean, we'd be looking at our parents going, "What are you on? Are you serious?"
Yeah, if they're like, go play video games. I mean, my parents would think that, our brains were gonna rot if we played more than like an hour.
Right. Absolutely.
And now it's like
every parent in America thought the same thing.
And probably, I don't blame them for, like, honestly, the technology we were looking at. There's old like radioactive CRT TVs and color consoles that we had back in the day.
No, having a phone attached to our head, a foot away, 24/7 now is much better than that.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Very good point. It's funny. I'm putting out a video. I went and downloaded. Every year they come out. The Tecmo Bowl game, the Super Tecmo Bowl game for the Nintendo. They come out with the new rosters every year. They just came out with one with the updated rosters as of like August 11th. And I'm running a full season with the Browns, and I did sit Deshaun for the first 11 games, and just now made it to the postseason.
Man of integrity.
Yeah, 100%. Like if it's not gonna be authentic, then why bother doing it, right?
That's right.
And I won't spoil it, but if anybody's made it this far in the video and happens to be wanting to watch this one coming out, in the 17th week of the season, Deshaun goes down. So now I am entering the playoffs with Jacoby, and I don't know if you remember that game, but the backup quarterbacks in that game there was a stark difference between the caliber of guys. I mean, it's talking about like throwing the ball 10 yards out of bounds or like actually completing a pass. So that's been my week. My downtime has been playing Tecmo Super Bowl on the Nintendo.
I have very fond memories of, you do the drop back, and I'm sure they probably tweaked the game a little bit. In the original game, you get the snap, and instantaneously you'd know if your wide receivers are being covered or not. And if they would not cover Webster Slaughter on the fly, I would just run the opposite direction with Bernie all the way back to the goal line, and then just chuck it. And he could chuck it 100 yards, just like any of the quarterbacks could. And it's going to be a touchdown 99 out of 100 times.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like that.
If they're covering you and you throw it to Ozzie Newsome, it's intercepted every time.
That was the first game. It was like, if they're covered, it's an 100% interception.
Right.
And then they had a couple plays. This is like, I mean, any kid who's listening to this is like, what kind of like Atari bullshit are you guys on? Right. But then you had the tight end that would kind of like do a slant, which it was undefendable. Yep. You had Bo Jackson in the game, which is virtually undefendable as well.
Correct. Yeah.
And then in the Super Bowl game, that came out in the early 90s, the next one, they fixed some of that stuff, but still an interesting game, and it holds up to this day. So there's some of the artifacts from our childhood.
Yeah, and if you called a run play and they called the run, you're in trouble too.
Yeah, you're blissed. And then you got and another fun factoid that comes out of that: the initial game, the '86 game, did have Kosar in it, and then I think it was '89. I want to say it was '89 that the next one, Super Bowl, came out, and it was QB Browns because Bernie was kind of starting off. He was him and Cunningham.
Quarterback club.
Yeah, the NFL quarterback club. And they didn't have the license to use him or Jim Kelly or some of those guys. And then the NFLPA came around and was like, you quarterback, we're bringing you back in here. They put a little weight on him at that point. But that's how powerful the quarterbacks were. Bernie started it.
I think Bernie had a big hand in that too.
Absolutely.
If I recall. He was really pushing the bus on that one, so I'll have to bring that up to Bernie.
I would be there's so many questions. Can I just send you like DMs with like a whole bunch of questions?
Absolutely. Send me a whole script.
I feel like I do have a little bit of an in here with you, and there are some questions that I need answered. Before my time expires.
I understand. We've got 17 weeks to sort that out now.
Okay. Well, guys, we've been at it for almost an hour here, a little shy of an hour.
20 minutes. 20 minutes. I honestly take another 20 and another 20.
I would continue going, but I know you probably have stuff to do, and I have a fantasy draft coming up here in a half hour.
There you go. You better prep for that.
Which I have not prepped very much for. So we'll see. But guys, thank you very much for sticking with us, Chris. As always, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I really do consider you really the guy who put me on the map, and put my videos out there.
You put yourself on the map.
Well,
I just gave you a little bit of an audience, a little bit of a bump.
Yeah,
a signal boost there for a little
you
bit.
poured some gas on it in a pretty major way, and I will forever be in debt to you for that. So thank you very, very much for, giving the world a glimpse of the talent that you now see here in full form on Brown and
That's
Post.
right. Well, when you speak of me, speak kindly.
Absolutely, always will. Thank you very much, Chris. We will be back for more. Subscribe to the channel, like all the stuff, follow Reflog_18 on Twitter if you don't already. I can't imagine there's Browns fans out there who actually don't at this point follow Chris, but if you don't, please do. All the guys over there at Big Play with Nick and Big Play Dave and all those guys, and watch the Bernie Show. And Gab, Gab, trying to get her on too. Schedule conflicts, are happening, but she's
fantastic.
We'll get her.
Good guest for you.
We will get her one day. All right. Thank you very much, Chris. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Go Browns.